Joe, on Friday, it was announced that Tennessee and the state of Virginia won for now a temporary injunction, or what you could basically call a temporary restraining order on the NCAA, and it lists a lot of things. Basically, in a summarization, the way that I read this from the court is that the NCAA in the states of Virginia and Tennessee cannot investigate NIL violations because of the antitrust law, yada, 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 yada. Joe, let me start off by saying one thing. The court ruling, okay, where it may be fair to figure out everything that's going on, okay, I understand. But it might be, for college, the worst ruling that we've ever had. Can I tell you why?
Why?
Because now you're a Notre Dame fan, correct?
Yep.
Who is their top recruit not named Deuce Knight?
Current top recruit?
Yes. Or just throw one out there that's committed at the current moment.
CJ Carr.
CJ Carr. Joe, there's absolutely nothing stopping me right now from getting him on a plane, paying for him to come where I currently am, paying for him to stay, doing an NIL deal with him to come to the school that I want him to go to, and flying him back home. That is precedent for a horrible situation in college athletics.
I understand, and I don't disagree. This is, in the grand scheme of things, not a bad thing for the fact that it is going to reshape the way that all this NIL stuff is happening, because it is going to remove some of the power that the NCAA has for a lot of the wrong reasons. But I agree with you. This ruling is going to, I'm not agreeing with you in the way that you think. It is going to open up catastrophically massive. There are going to be so many instances, undocumented, unreported instances of recruiting violations that cannot be held accountable for. But this is not...
Because they will wrap it up in an NIL bow.
Yes. Well, right now, my whole point is that the NCAA and Charlie Baker came in and was trying to reestablish new rules by setting precedent, by investigating Tennessee and then having a ruling handed down on the actions by Tennessee. But inadvertently, they set their own precedent in the opposite direction. They set the precedent now that if the NCAA wants to investigate you, and you just said it, schools are now just going to say, all right, we're suing you. We're taking you to the state courts. We're going to sue you. They set a precedent, one that is so damaging to the sport. This is my whole point, is that Charlie Baker did not have the foresight to know and to realize that something like this could happen, because he tried to retroactively enforce something after he decided he wanted to make it illegal. If he wanted to properly handle this, Blake, he should have established new rules. He should have been very specific. He should have detailed those rules and dictated them to all of the schools and said, these are the rules going forward of what you can and cannot do. We are enforcing them from this day on. Anything you did in the past, we will look past, but we're moving forward with these new rules. But because he tried to do it retroactively, he is the one who opened this massive Pandora's box.
What did he try to do retroactively?
He is trying, according to the Tennessee president, they said that the guidelines that were delivered were extremely vague after the initial NIL ruling back in 2021, which they were.
Which is not true.
They were vague. They were incredibly vague.
Can I tell you how they're not vague?
How?
Because I am using here right now I am not trying to be political, but this is from Senator Ted Cruz. The temporary bill, the way that I understand this, will bring some guidelines for there not to be pay for play. Joe, exactly what just happened.
But that's Ted Cruz. What was delivered Do we have the memo? Is there even a
Yes,
copy of the memo from the NCAA?
Congress gave them a memo of what they think they should enact. It wasn't final, and it's not final, but they are trying to enact those things. Joe, again, can we get – I understand the argument of everything the NCAA has done in the past. I actually agree with you, too, on Charlie Baker, who has been in politics, should know how to play politics, should have seen that this could come and actually happen. I am not excusing Charlie Baker whatsoever. The problem is that I don't think it is a big deal if you have a 5-star quarterback that legitimately, okay, is on a plane with a booster. Like, what are we like? Why can't they investigate that? And you know what else? Tennessee and the Spire Group came out and said that we have nothing to hide. Well, let me just say something. If you don't have nothing to hide, you don't sue the NCAA in federal and state court. You don't. Because
wait, what?
Why would they sue them if there's nothing to hide?
If they don't have anything to hide, well,
if everything that they did with Nico Iamaleava was above board, they would not have paid. Let me tell you why this is a big deal.
But wait,
you mean to tell me that they're not going to collect $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in attorney's fees to fight this? Oh, but we're clean. We didn't do anything wrong. Then why not show that you didn't do anything wrong?
But it's not a matter of was the action incorrect. That's not where their whole argument is.
But the action is incorrect. And everybody and their mama in college.
Not because there was no specificity in the rules that were delivered to these schools in 2001. And most presidents and athletic directors have said that.
Was pay for play in there? Yes or no?
It was not, but the vagueness of it opened up this.
Right here. Pay for play is the number one thing.
Also, you're not paying a kid to play just because you're paying for him to get onto a plane.
You mean to tell me that a Knoxville media group flew a kid from California to Knoxville to do an NIL deal, and you're not trying to get him to go to Tennessee? That's what you're telling me.
If an NFL player gets on a plane to go sign his new contract and to do a visit, is that part of his contract and his compensation? No, that is just
you know what it's called?
In the negotiation.
You know what it's called? Tampering. Ask Magic Johnson what happened.
If he's unsigned. If he's unsigned, it doesn't matter. If a kid isn't, if there is no, we're not talking about a kid that's playing somewhere yet. We're talking about a recruit that got onto a plane, traveled to a school, and the school funded the trip, and he got to be on a private plane.
Well, the school that has nothing to trip. The Spire Group funded the trip.
The Spire Group, which it is. Tomato on who's behind that.
Fair.
My point is that that's not his compensation. His compensation wasn't the plane. His compensation was the NIL deal that he was given and the money that he's making. Just because the kid got onto a plane because you're trying to impress him does not mean that was part of an inducement for pay to play. That's my whole point, is that there was
if a billionaire flies to you right now and picks you up in a private jet and you got all the things that being on a private jet comes, you're going to tell me that's not an inducement? Stop the cap.
But that's the whole point, because you're not directly handing him money. You're spending a shitload of money to impress the kid.
That's what the NIL deal is.
You're trying to impress the kid. That's what the action is of getting him on the plane, is saying like, wow, son, look how nice this airplane is.
So you know what I'm going to do? Let me tell you what I'm going to do as someone who does NIL deals.
Okay.
I'm going to take the number one recruit at Notre Dame, and I am going to go pay him to come to Baton Rouge and tell him to come on.
You're allowed to pay for his trip. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're not allowed to pay for his trip. Joe, number one, is a massive recruiting
violation. That's the whole point that I'm trying to get at, is that the guidelines that were given out by the NCAA were so vague that
Joe, the problem that you and every college football media core seems to be forgetting, it is a recruiting violation.
It was a recruiting violation. Before NIL, it was a recruiting violation.
Hell no. You know why it's not?
Why?
Because you legitimately have the IRS defunding an A&M collective, saying that it is not the guidelines of antitrust. So stay with me for just a second. You had the federal government taking down a collective with Texas A&M. Do you remember? That story we talked about?
Yeah.
In that, they said that this was pay for play. The reason they had to take it down was hold on, please, let me finish. They said it was taken down in a pay for play scheme after the big recruiting that Jimbo Fisher had in that year. That's why it got defunded. Now you legitimately have the same type of situation. So we do have precedent that is not allowed, even in a federal court system, when the IRS said, we have determined that this was a pay-for-play scheme. So you're gonna have to identify to me that this is not, number one, how college football has to be set up. In the NFL, when you're drafting dudes, you go in order based off a bad record. Do you not?
Yeah, you do.
And everybody uses, this is how they do it in the NFL. It's college. It's recruiting. When you do something like that, it should be a violation. And let me tell you another damn thing. I see everybody on social media swatting down restrictions. But yet when a restriction, and Joe, we're just talking about an investigation. Did they do something that they weren't supposed to? Now, let me remind you of two things. In 2022, what were the two biggest stories in recruiting?
Rashada and Nico.
And why were they?
Because of how much money they were given.
And everybody said that regulations and restrictions had to come to NIL. It's why everybody went to Washington, D.C., Greg Sankey, Nick Saban, Charlie Baker, and everybody. Everybody says, hey, we want restrictions on this. This cannot happen. Then the NCAA investigates, did they do something wrong? And everybody goes, no, they did it in a wrong way. Joe, as someone who spent a decade in investigative work, you should not be tampered with in an investigation of wrongdoing.
I think that you're to believe that a kid getting onto a plane is wrong is not. I really don't think is the issue. Because it's not. You and I are going to disagree on that aspect of it.
Are you really going to sit here about to tell me that it's not pay for play with Nico? Are you really about to tell me that?
Because that literally doesn't make sense for it to be pay for play, because all you're doing is getting the kid on the plane to impress him. That's it. What was pay for play was signing the NIL deal.
Take the plane away.
Okay.
A Knoxville group paying a kid from California to come there.
Every NIL group is paying these kids. Every single NIL group is paying these kids. So why are if that's
sending a booster on a plane to go and get them? They're not getting caught.
We don't know that.
Joe, yes, do I know that other schools are doing it? Yes. Do I know that they're not this sloppy? Also, yes. But does everybody and their mama speed on the highway? Hell yeah. But it doesn't stop the fact that when you get a speeding ticket, that you as an individual person weren't speeding.
But the biggest issue here, and then where I think that you're moving past, or you're getting stuck on before we get to, is that what was presented to these schools, and we have presidents and athletic directors saying that it was incredibly vague, and they were merely operating under what they understood.
It was really vague. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about the Tennessee court. I'm talking about the Tennessee president. But that is what the court ruling, part of what it was, is that the whole issue, though, here that I'm trying to get at, and why the NCAA's actions, this whole process, are what has led to these problems. They are creating their own issues. They are constantly creating their own problems. It is bullshit for them to try to come to the table after the fact to try to enforce rules. If they wanted to get people to fall in line and listen, they would have presented new rules, and they would have said, this is the new ruling going forward.
Joe, can I recruit a kid during a dead period?
No, you can't.
Can I recruit it? If I'm a coach, can I bring a kid in a dead period? Can I fly him to a game?
No, can a company that is the only company in their industry restrictively enforce rules?
Say that again.
Can a company that is the only company within its industry restrictively enforce rules?
Yeah, they're called the SEC, meaning not the conference. You legitimately gave me every federal agency in the world. Yes.
I'm not talking about agencies. I'm talking about this is the problem, though, is that the NCAA is the only college sports entity, and what they're doing is an unfair enforcement of rules.
Is it a rule, a recruiting violation, that you can be on a plane with a booster? Yes or no?
I would argue in the modern NIL, I think that
no.
It was not specific enough to that. It is not
specific
specific enough to say that you can't put a kid on a private plane because they pay for kids' flights commercially. Why is this suddenly? And it's not a university. It's a booster.
School does it.
It's a booster. It's not a university.
Okay, well then,
they could have no idea that even happened.
Okay. Well, you know what happened to? Can I tell you what happened exactly to Tennessee? Remember Walter Nolan?
Yeah.
You know Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
Remember in the NCAA violations that everybody agreed to, Tennessee included, that one of the restrictions that they got hit with was Walter Nolan being on the plane with a booster?
That was pre-NIL.
It wasn't pre-NIL. It was in 2000. It was in 2022. NIL was passed in 2020 or 2021, whatever it was. NIL was already enacted.
I haven't seen that, so I can't speak.
Well, it's part of the Jeremy Pruitt investigation, and Tennessee agreed to it. So you already agreed. You already agreed that in wrongdoing on the same violation that you lit Jeremy Pruitt on.
Was it the core basis of that investigation, though? It was the fact that they were putting money in bags.
It was the reason that they found what was going on. It was the sole basis.
Jeremy Pruitt wasn't at
Tennessee. He was the head coach of Tennessee.
Not in 2022.
No, that's when the court case, or that's when the NCAA came down on him. 2022, 2023.
He was. So I don't understand where Walter Nolan comes into this, because he was
Walter Nolan was being recruited. Remember the McDonald's bags of cash?
Yes.
Okay. He was flown by a booster on a private plane to Knoxville
when he was a recruit.
When he was a recruit, Tennessee.
What recruiting class was Walter Nolan in?
I don't know. Probably 2021, maybe.
He was,
because it was the A&M big, whatever A&M's big class was, 2021, 2022. What I don't remember.
I think it was 2021. I'm like,
because he'd have been a freshman in 22, 23. He was a sophomore this year, and he's going to be a junior at Ole Miss in 24.
No, 2022 was his first year, which means he was a
2022. If you're a freshman in 22, you're in the class.
But I have no understanding of how Jeremy Pruitt, who was fired in 2020, would have gotten a kid on a plane and was suddenly involved in. But when did this flight happen? Because it couldn't have been after 2020. Let's stop talking about this part.
Okay. But it was a part of it because he was in the investigation.
That doesn't make any sense to me. It had to have been before the ruling, though.
Okay. No, the ruling comes after. All right. The bottom line for me is this. By the way, is my video?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. The bottom line for me is simply this. If we're going to sit here and act like and say to ourselves, Joe, that this is not a problem, okay, that schools now, which had a SEC coach tell me today that it's already starting to be a problem of boosters getting kids to fly in to where they're at. Joe, the Wild Wild West just got wilder. You like maybe
I don't disagree with this part. Okay. I really don't disagree with this part.
Then let me ask this then. Maybe because I need somebody to tell me where I'm missing. If this court case ruling for Tennessee and Virginia makes the wild, wild west of recruiting even wilder, then what am I missing? Right? Like, I get that the NCAA has done a lot of bad things. I agree with everybody. I agree with players being paid. NIL, have done them myself. What I struggle with is how everybody can see that that was an issue and that maybe it should have been investigated, and everybody say to themselves, well, hey, man, go Tennessee. Rocky Top will always be home sweet home to me. Why is everybody defending Tennessee when everybody knows that this is going to make the sport even crazier? Like, why can't we have restrictions and guidelines? Like, for once, like, let me give an example. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Okay. All I was going to say was they're defending Tennessee because they were all doing it. They were all doing something.
I'm talking about the
similar.
media. I'm talking about the media. I'm not talking about colleges. Actually, to be honest with you, I know of 3 coaches in the SEC right now that was hoping that it didn't pass so that their jobs didn't get tougher.
I get what you're saying, that, and this is all what I'm getting at. Like, I think that you and I actually have commonality in this thought.
So what am I missing? What am I missing?
The thing that I think that you're missing is what I've been trying to say earlier, is that the NCAA and Baker's decision to try and go after Tennessee before putting down rules and then saying, this is what we're following going forward. He tried to, without any specifics, investigate them. That's where this becomes messy. And this is why I think that the court case is moving as expeditiously as it is, and why it is going against the NCAA, is because the argument can be made is, well, what are you really investigating us for? Can the NCAA wait 1 second. Can the NCAA just decide to investigate whoever they want if they smell or just feel a little bit uncomfortable with the way that somebody's doing something?
I would agree with that. If Nico Iamai, if it was Florida, I feel more about that than anybody, because the kid wound up not really going there. He signed, he didn't go there. Okay, with Jaden Rashada. Joe, I would agree if Nico wasn't there. I would also agree if they're not doing the same thing to Florida. Like, Joe, we got to have somebody that lays down some enforcement.
I don't disagree with that.
If anybody in their mama believes that what happened on Friday with Tennessee is not a massive problem, Joe, you didn't convince me. All I heard from you just then was, oh, so they've done some bad things in the past. Okay.
What I said.
Okay. Well, you didn't let me finish. They done some bad things in the past, and that they're investigating something that, quite honestly, they don't have guidelines over. But, Joe, they cited the guideline in the temporary restraining order. The guideline that they're going after is investigation of antitrust misplacement. Maybe not misplacement, or whatever the last word is. They cited it. Joe, there are NIL guidelines that everybody is I think, Joe, can I ask you a question? Is it a problem to have a guideline that says pay for play is an issue? That if I go and get a kid,
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so how can we go from everybody and their mama saying that what's going on when Nico was being recruited and Rashada was being recruited, that this is an issue, to now turn around and say, NCAA, you suck?
Because, again, what I've been trying to say here is, if they just decided to let Tennessee be, if they just let them be, and they didn't open this can of worms, there was a right way to do this and there was a wrong way to do this.
And what was the way they should have done it?
I said at the beginning of the show, they should have, Baker and the NCAA should have put together, this is the very strict ruling on what is going to be allowed and not allowed going forward.
But they could have sued that on that too. This doesn't change them suing.
I disagree with that though. I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion that other schools would have sued. I think that Tennessee felt like they were being made an example of a second time in a row is why this immediately went to court.
No,
But
here's the
the antitrust issue though, in my eyes, the way that I've seen this has more to do with the fact that they're unrightfully investigating a program just because they feel the right to do so. That's where the whole antitrust thing comes into play, is that you're trying to prevent this singular entity from zeroing in on and attacking specific programs that are a part of its organization. I don't think any other school, if they set rules and they were very specific rules and they said, this is what you cannot and can do with NIL, we're doing this going forward. And if you violate it, we're going to investigate you and there will be penalties that are going to be held down. I don't think that we would have gone in this direction. But for some dumb reason, their decision was, we're going to just investigate and then we're going to try and set a precedent after.
Well, the problem I have with that is, okay, with this court ruling, here's my bottom line. The problem that's going to happen is the Wild Wild West is going to get wilder. There's going to be more chaos that surrounds recruiting in NIL, even though I'm looking at, the Division I Council's rules of NIL per the NCAA and guidelines that they do have. Okay, Joe, it's been 4 years since NIL has become a thing. 4 years. Since either July 1st or August 1st of 2020 was when it went into force. Joe, we're sitting here in February of 2024 and nothing's changed. Everybody keeps telling me that all of this has got to break down for things to change, and then we'll get, the sport back in a right track. What? We've been waiting 4 years. Joe, I could have gone to school and graduated by the time that any enforcement comes down. Y'all, everybody thinking that we'll just figure it out, and the government and everybody, the conferences will figure it out, because it's going to take one son of a bitch to go up to Greg Sankey and says, you ain't going to investigate me. And he goes, you're right. I'm not.
This was going to take time though. Like, this process was going to take time. I don't know what to say to that part. I just don't think that their approach was the right one. They dug their own grave. They have made this situation. We have to point the finger at somebody. We can't just
point at somebody who potentially did the wrong thing.
It's not this isn't Tennessee's fault. This isn't Tennessee's fault.
How in the good goddamn is this not Tennessee's fault?
Just because they're the ones suing does not mean that they're the ones.
Again, they're saying that you're picking on me by an investigation.
Yes.
Bitch, stop doing NIL or recruiting violations.
Okay, but there has been so many changes and so many issues that have occurred in the past few years. It is impossible to keep up with it. It's not their fault that they're just trying their best to stay competitive with the modern college landscape.
I agree with this. This is the big thing that I agree with. That Cody says that the real problem is the NCAA try to make it an NIL problem when it's a recruiting violation. That's the big problem that they messed up on. In a year from now, me and you are going to be on a show. I don't want to hear a word about this crippling the sport, because it's going to cripple it.
I don't think it's going to cripple it. I think it's going to hurt the sport. No, because actually, like, let's really talk about this part.
Okay.
What happens in the result of this is not the sport getting worse. It is
for other people that cannot pay for play.
We didn't even talk about or take this angle. This is the biggest next step in separation of the biggest conferences. Plain and simple. I'm just going to be honest with you. I trust much greater the Big Ten and the SEC to handle this and to figure out the proper direction for this.
If you really believe that Greg Sankey or Tony Pertiti will come down with any kind of enforcement, Joe, look what it took for him to suspend Harbaugh. Look what it took Tony Pertiti.
That was in the middle of a season.
I don't give two Rudy
unprecedented
Poos.
situation.
I don't give two Rudy Poos. He's got Connor Stallions on the sideline of a Michigan State game.
You can't just deliver punishment for something that hasn't been effectively.
You're right. It's got to be investigated, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Ask the NCAA if they were trying to do the same thing.
But those are such completely different issues. Completely different issues.
Fair.
But
fair.
My point is that my main takeaway from all this is that the NCAA's power is continually being crippled, and all this is going to after the joint venture by the Big Ten and the SEC. They build what they see as the future of the sport. I think a lot of teams are going to join and follow them, and that they're going to separate from the NCAA.
Good luck for March Madness.
I don't have no idea what's going to happen with that.
Okay.
I almost don't think they care.
Yeah, they don't, because all the money that they make from football, they will protect football at any cost, no matter what happens. Let me say this too, to your point. I think that you'd label this segment, does this cripple the sport? Can I tell you, in my view, why I think it cripples the sport?
Why?
Because there's no amount of drama. Like, Joe, the drama is about to pick up in recruiting. It is about to massively pick up, because there's nothing for a booster to call a big-time prospect and in the open do NIL deals. Like, I mean, at least we had people in the shade. At least we had people that weren't doing it. So, Joe, let me just tell you this. When a big-time recruit flips on signing day because a booster wanted him to come to his school, and it's, God forbid, it's your school, you're going to say, oh my God, we got to do something. Well, you can't. And if you think that this is going to be the only way it won't cripple the sport is if Greg Sankey and Tony Pertiti move massively quick.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.